Hi, it's Andy, and today I'm bringing you a video where I give you a book for every year I've been alive. I've just watched Chloe Reads Books do this exact video, and I was like, well, hell yeah, I'm going to be doing that. Like, it sounds so much fun until you realise you're 31 and it's less fun doing it that way. But what I've done is I've gone through my shelves and what I've read and found a book for every year that I've been alive. So I was born in 1992, I'm 31, and so I found a book that was published in every year from 1992 until now. I'll tag Chloe's video below because that's where I got the idea from. And yeah, I am just going to get right into it because 31 books is a few to get through. Now, there will be a few of these where I don't have the physical book in hand, and that is because they are on top of my bookshelves and I cannot reach the top of my bookshelves. So I'm not climbing anything for the video. If I can reach it just by standing, I did not grab the book. So I will put them up here and just, let you know that way. But they are on my shelves. I'm looking at Diana Gabaldon ones just now. The Patricia Cornwell ones are up there. I'm telling you, I cannot reach them without a ladder, so you're not getting those, you're getting a picture of those. The first book, and that is publishing year 1992, is A Dragonfly in Amber by Diana Gabaldon. This is the second in the Outlander series. Outlander is older than me, so yeah, and the last one was only published last year or this year, I believe, I can't remember, but yeah, it's been going on for a while. But as it's the second, I can't really give you a synopsis, but Outlander in general is about Claire, who goes back in time. She's in the 1940s, 1950s, after World War II, and she's on a honeymoon with her husband in Scotland and accidentally goes through the standing stones in the area and is transported back 200 years, where she meets Jamie Fraser, a Highlander who is dying, and she is told she has to save him and gets stuck in the past, and basically their life together from there. General gist of Outlander, I suppose, ish. 1993 gives us Cruel and Unusual by Patricia Cornwell. This is the fourth book in the Kay Scarpetta series, and again, I just got my delivery of the newest one today, so again, this one has been spanning a good few years, and this is basically about Kay Scarpetta, who is a chief medical examiner in Virginia, and you do follow her around the US and sometimes different places in the world, and it's basically just crime, mystery, thriller novels that follow the medical examiner, and they are my favourites because Patricia Cornwell herself is a forensic scientist, so she understands, she does all the research. They are so true to life in as much a way as, novels can be. Like, the science is correct, the technology is correct, she doesn't write out with something that's physically possible, and I absolutely love that. On to 1994, and something that helped me with my degree is Dead Men Do Tell Tales by William R. Maples. This is Strange and Fascinating Cases of a Forensic Anthropologist. This is a non-fiction written by a forensic anthropologist about some of the cases that he's worked, and I used this when I had to do a presentation on forensic anthropology. So yeah, if you don't know what forensic anthropology is, so forensics is just a prefix that gets put onto things, meaning that it's a legal thing. So like, forensic scientists look at the same things that scientists do. So for example, a forensic DNA analyst and a DNA analyst. So for example, a DNA analyst and a forensic DNA analyst do the same job. It's just that the forensic DNA analyst, their work is going towards some kind of criminal case. So that's basically a forensic biologist. They study similar things to other biologists. It's just that, again, it's going towards some kind of criminal case. That's the difference. So an anthropologist is someone who studies not just bones, but that's the thing that they're most known for. and a forensic anthropologist does so in a way that is for court purposes, for example. So yeah, this William Maples is a forensic anthropologist, and this is basically a book that he just wrote about some of his cases, which does include the Romanovs, because he was one of the forensic scientists that worked on the bones when they found them and identified them, which is really cool. For 1995, we have From Potter's Field. I did try not to do the same author twice, but unfortunately I have gaps. So we're getting some more Patricia Cornwell. Again, this is a Kay Scarpetta novel, and it's just further on in the series. This one actually works around unidentified remains, so a Potter's Field is somewhere where they put unidentified remains, so that if they then get a break in the case, they can go back and exhume to hand over to the family or to do more testing, etc, etc. So it's a Potter's Field is actually somewhere where you would put unidentified bodies to put them to rest, and all of Patricia Cornwell's titles for the Kay Scarpetta series do encapsulate what that book is about. So for example, Cruel and Unusual that I was talking about earlier is about cruel and unusual forms of punishment, so kind of like torture, so like the victims have been tortured in a certain way. From Potter's Field is about unidentified bodies that are in the Potter's Field. Very, very interesting, I have to say. For 1996, we have Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. I only read this recently, like this year or last year. This is the book that the movie is based off of, and they're fairly similar, but I personally think the movie's better, and I know that's a cardinal sin in the book world, but I just love the movie so much. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. I just love it, and this is very, very different, but it is very... I really liked it. I really did. I liked it. It's not my favourite, and I don't know if I'll pick up the others, but yeah, it's about this family, the Owenses, who are witches, and this town that they live in, and the tragedy that happens to these sisters that sort of brings them back together again. If you don't know Practical Magic, I just can't describe it to you, I'm sorry. For 1997, we have one of the stories within this. So this is a bind-up of 3 of the Nightworld stories. So there are currently 9 books in the Nightworld series, which are bound into 3 volumes. This is volume 2, and the one for this is The Chosen, which is the second in this, which was published in 1997 before being written into this bind-up. The 10th one is yet to be written. So, Nightworld basically follows... Every book follows a different chosen one, as it were, and the point is that they have to come together to save the world. That's the book that we don't have, is them saving the world. But this is their individual stories and how they become who they are bound to be. It's very YA 90s, Vampire Diaries level book-wise-esque Twilight-y, that's what these are like, but personally, I think I actually prefer these. I should probably point out that L.J. Smith also wrote Vampire Diaries, so that's not a strange connection, but more people know Vampire Diaries than the Nightworld books, I think. 1998 brings us back to Kay Scarpetta with Point of Origin, and this, if you can't tell by the title and maybe the cover, I can't remember what it looks like, this follows Kay Scarpetta as she is looking at fire scenes. So they're looking to discover the point of origin of the fire and the arson, etc. Love it. 1999 brings us another one where I'll say the film is better, and that is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I just cannot get into Neil Gaiman's writing, but I absolutely adore the movie for Stardust. But yeah, this is about this place called Wall that is on the edge of the world, or the dimension. So there's this wall next to the town, which is how it gets its name, and if you cross over the wall you get to what is basically a fae. I think anyway that it's supposed to be a fae land, and so there's a watcher at the wall who will not let anybody past, and at one point a boy gets past, comes back, a few months later a baby is at his doorstep, A baby has been delivered to the wall for him, and the watcher brings it to his doorstep. And then this follows Tristan, who is the baby, and he wants to go over the wall to find a star for the girl that he loves in the village to present to her so that she will marry him. But he doesn't seem to realise that in the world over the wall, stars are not just rocks. They are actually humanesque. And so this is his hunt to find the star and bring the star back as he gets to know the star. And also there's this whole thing of the king has died and his 7 sons or 11 sons or something like that, I think it's 7 sons, are trying to kill each other to accede to the throne. Don't ask me how much of this I'm remembering from the film and how much I'm remembering from the book, because I just don't know. And then the millennium brings us to Witch Child by Celia Rees. I love this. This is a diary style historical, not quite fiction, about a girl who moves over to somewhere near Salem during colonisation times and is kind of seen as strange and odd and is obviously accused of being a witch. And it's such a good book. I can't even, if I start talking about this, I will not stop. But trust me, if you love historical fiction based on true events, if you're a massive history buff, you will want to read this book. This is the beautiful 20th anniversary edition that I just had to get because it's just gorgeous. And then 2001 brings us to Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris. The name of this series is the Southern Vampire Mysteries, but you will know it better as True Blood. So yep, the TV series had a book series, and this is the book series that it is based off of. And this follows Suki Stackhouse, who is a psychic, not a psychic, she can read minds, telepath, there we go. She is a telepath, and she lives in a world where vampires exist, and they are now out of the coffin. So if they have come into the light of day, or not quite, they have come into the awareness of the humans because they've developed a synthetic blood called True Blood. There are other brands, but True Blood is one of the brands, hence the name. And it allows them to survive without having to feed on humans. Obviously that's, not quite how it all goes. But this basically follows Suki as she gets to know the vampire who's moved in next door. It is set down south in Louisiana, in a place called Bonchamps. Bonchamps? I want to say, I cannot remember. But Suki's a waitress, and everybody thinks she's ditzy and blonde, but she's actually really intelligent. And then the vampires come to town, and they discover that she can help them, and she gets into a whole lot of hijinks with them. This is very, very much an 18+ book. So by hijinks, I do mean a lot of death and gore and murder. And then 2002 brings us to Sorceress by Celia Rees. I surprisingly did not have anything else, I think, on my shelves that I could pull out for this year prompt. But this is the sequel where the author Celia Rees has done her research to follow the main character from the second one to find out kind of what happened to her after the diary ends, and has given a fictionalised version of her life after that. So it was very, very interesting. Celia Rees is really like a dog with a bone when it comes to research, and I absolutely love it. And if you ask Tori as well, she also loves this. Again, the 20th anniversary editions of these books are just so beautiful. Now 2003 brings us to The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, and I feel like everybody knows what this is about. This is about, I can never remember his name, Robert Langdon, who is a professor of something. I can't remember what, but he's very, very good at puzzles, hence the puzzle on the front, and he is brought in by the police to help solve a crime, but what he doesn't know is his name has been written in blood by the dead man, and so they think that he has killed him. And so while Robert is trying to clear his name and figure out who killed this man, while teamed up with the man's granddaughter, there's a whole lot of play. It's very like biblically based, think like National Treasure, but biblical-esque. Like the bloodline of Jesus level, biblical-esque. I really, really loved this. The puzzles, the riddles, just all the action. These books are these are like the only mystery books that I can really read, if I'm being honest. Next up is the first book in one of my favourite series of all time, and that is Love Bites by Lindsay Sands. I don't have this. I can reach it, but I don't have this because currently my friend Vicky has it, because she has started that series. It is an investment. It is 30 plus books long, but they are quick, they are fast, they are love stories, and they are sort of sci-fi paranormal romances. I've gone on about these books so many times, I don't think I need to give you the rundown, but it is about vampires, scientific vampires, sci-fi vampires, not mythical vampires. And basically these stories are from each perspective of each different family member, and then it branches out from there, and it is about how they find their life mate. So it is a fated mate style vampire, human, or vampire, like them coming together to find, and there's always an obstacle. The books always go the same way. It's a case of they find each other, they don't want to say that they want to be together, they are put into some kind of danger, they realise they love each other happily ever after. That is how those books go. It's nice and predictable, but the character work is just beautiful. And then 2005, we go to Labyrinth by Kate Moss. Again, one of my favourite authors of all time. This is the first of her Languedoc series, and this series is set in the south of France, in the region that used to be the Languedoc, or Occitan, I think is another way to name it. And Labyrinth itself is about Alice, and she is helping her friend who's on an archaeological dig where she unearths some skeletons, and sort of weird things start happening after that. People start coming after her. She finds more about her history, of her family, and then we switch back to the time of is it the Huguenots? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read this, but we switch back to the 1200s, and we follow Alice. Same name. It goes between the two Alices. It's great. And she discovers that her husband is unfaithful and that her father is carrying secrets. And so when her father agrees to tell her these secrets, she ends up going on this sort of quest, this mission, this it's a whole like holy grail, again religion based, like need to get the Holy Grail away from people type thing, like a grail quest. And it's got who are the people? This has like Templars and Crusades, and it, like I said, it jumps between the two characters, and their storylines start to come together until they meet, and you get the connection between the two characters, and it all comes to a head. I love this so much. This is one of my favourite books of all time. And once I get rid of my tattoo, I will probably end up getting a little labyrinth in its place, because I love this so much. 2006, excellent year because it brings us Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. This is the second in the Percy Jackson series, and it follows Percy and Annabeth as they go into the Sea of Monsters to rescue Grover. And other things happen, because 5-book series, there's more to it than just the one thing. But yeah, this is the one that's not everybody's favourite, but I do quite like this one as well. I just love Percy Jackson, as we all know. 2007 then introduces us to City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is the first in the Immortal Instruments series and follows the Shadowhunters. This is the first Shadowhunters book, and it follows Clary Frey as she discovers that she is not quite human, and there is a shadow world that she's just kind of seeing. And as she kind of pulls back that veil, things start to go, awry. Her mum is taken. She discovers these people who she doesn't know whether she can trust them or not, and discovers that her dad might not be exactly who she thought he was. I love the Shadowhunter world. I do. I really, really do. And yeah, this is the start of it. And 2008 really, really gets us kicking into the stride of the young adult dystopians with The Hunger Games. This is obviously not the edition that was released back in 2008. This is the brand new special edition from Waterstones, and I just had to show it off because, again, look how beautiful it is. Like, I don't even think the camera's doing it justice because it really is this beautiful, beautiful edition. But Hunger Games, again, if you don't know what The Hunger Games is about, how have you avoided it? Like, not even where have you been? How have you managed to avoid it? But anyway, The Hunger Games follows this post-war apocalyptic dystopian utopian world where America has basically been split into the capital and 12 districts. There were 13, but you get to that later. And every year, names are drawn from lots in each of these districts for children to take part in the Hunger Games, which is a battle royale style fight to the death. And there's one victor, and they normally come from the richer areas. And this is all to entertain the people of the capital, while also reminding the districts why they should never fight back. This year, Katniss's little sister gets pulled, even though it's her first year and her name is only in once, and so Katniss immediately volunteers to take her place and is unexpectedly thrown into the Hunger Games with the boy who saved her life years ago. Now, this series gets more and more sort of dramatic as we go on. It's a rebellion. It is just the epitome of dystopian, really, for me, is the Hunger Games. And yeah, I love the books. I think the movies are great, but there's just something about the books and the psychological torture that goes on that just hits different from the movies. 2009 brings us to Beautiful Creatures by Kami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. This is about Ethan, who has lived in this small southern town his whole life, Southern America, not South America, but southern, like US. And suddenly this new girl turns up called Lena, who is the niece of the town sort of crazy recluse. And Lena is not exactly normal. And so Ethan finds himself drawn to her and she's drawn to him, but she knows on her 16th birthday something horrible is going to happen, and while she's also drawn to Ethan, she wants to keep him safe because she believes that things are going to go very, very badly on her 16th birthday. And yeah, this is basically just like young adult, small town politics, mysticism, Ethan learning about magic. I really, really love this. This is one of my favourite books to go back to, and I can't wait to do another reread of this. If you understand how calendars work, you will know we're at 2010. 2010 is the year I left high school. So yeah, this is the year I turned 18, and the book I've got for this year is The Body Finder by Kimberly Derting. I have never ever met or spoken to another single person who has, one, heard of this, or two, read this book. This series, I love it so much, and one of my friends had to special order one of the books from Switzerland for me because we could not get it in this country. So yeah, the dedication to this series, unmatched. This follows our main character Violet, who has a special ability to hear the echoes of bodies, and by echoes what I mean is each dead body, be it animal or human, has a particular, she calls them echoes. So it might be the sound of a bell ringing, it might be the smell of roses, it could be a certain feeling that she gets, and she can hear those echoes, and it's individual to that person. But what she discovers when a serial killer comes around is that these echoes also attach to the person that killed them. So for example, when it's animals, she will find that, say, a cat kills a bird. The bird's echo will attach to the cat, but then she discovers the serial killer is collecting these echoes and he is starting to hone in on her. So she's trying to find out who this person is before he can find her and before he can kill anybody else. This series continues to get slightly more, again, like with the Hunger Games, it goes into more, obviously there's more people that can do this than just her, and you get to find out more about that side of the world. But initially it's really just about Violet and trying to survive and exist with this incredible gift that she sees kind of as a curse, because, you know, she's finding dead bodies a lot. 2011, it gives us The Magician King by Lev Grossman. This is the second in the Magician's trilogy, and this trilogy follows Quentin Coldwater as he goes to Breakville School of Magic. It is like a magical college, so this is set like, this is very much an adult book and it is quite brutal. There are a lot of triggers, so I would check that if you're gonna read it. But he is due to go to an interview to get into an Ivy League school. When he gets there, the person that is meant to be interviewing him is dead, and when the paramedics show up, one of them is a bit strange and ends up giving him this manuscript to this book series called Fillory and Further. And Quentin grew up loving Fillory and Further, which is basically Narnia. The whole thing is basically Narnia. And she gives him this manuscript called The Magicians, which is on like the 9th book or so. I can't even remember how many books there are, but it doesn't exist. And before he knows it, the top sheet is whipped out of his grasp, and he finds himself pushing through this alleyway and in winter in New York, and suddenly it's summer as he's pushed through this bush, and he is at Brakebills, and he's there for the entrance exam to see if he can get into his magic school, which he does, and then you follow his time. Really, the first book, you get his whole time at school. It is not a magic school series. You get like a magic school book, and then after that it is really him dealing with the real world and what it means to be special in a way that you're not allowed to show that you're special. It's such a weird, really, really dark series, but they also end up going to Fillory, and I love that. It is very much Narnia, but dark as hell. Like, if the Grimms wrote Narnia, this is kind of how it would go. Then we go to 2012, which is the year the world was supposed to end. If you know, you know. And that brings us A Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. This is the second book in the Discovery of Witches series. I know there's probably a different name for it. All Souls trilogy. There we go. So this is the second book in the All Souls trilogy, and the All Souls trilogy follows Diana, who is a witch who is from a very powerful family but doesn't really have that much power herself, and she suppresses her power and does not want to be a witch, and so she is a professor at either Harvard or Yale, I can't remember, or Oxford. No, Harvard. I think she's Harvard. I need to reread these books. So she is a professor, and she goes to Oxford to sort of study sabbatical. So she's doing her own research rather than teaching. And there she pulls a manuscript out of the stacks, or out of the collection. And it is a very strange manuscript. And when she sends it back, people start coming for her. So she suddenly finds all these strange people are following her, talking to her, or trying to get information out of her, and it pushes her back into the world that she wanted to stay away from. So in this world there are witches, demons, and vampires. The three species are not meant to sort of interweave together. They're not even meant to be friends. They're not even meant to gather in groups, because then they start looking less human to the humans. And because of this, it starts to garner attention when these creatures start coming up to Diana because she's pulled this book. One of these creatures is Matthew de Clermont, and Matthew de Clermont is a very old and very powerful vampire, and he is drawn to Diana at the same time as he wants the book from her, but he is also a scientist and he's a geneticist, and it's really, really interesting, his part in it. But yeah, this story basically follows a love story between Diana, and a forbidden love story between Diana and Matthew, and also what is going on with the creatures, because every year more vampires are failing in the turn, so more people are dying than turning into vampires. The demons are becoming crazier and crazier to the point of like, and the witches are every generation are less powerful when they should really be getting more powerful. So something's going on, and in amongst all this, Matthew and Diana are trying to figure out what the heck is going on, while everybody is kind of after them. So yeah, I just love this series so much. To 2013, we have Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. This series, I actually really, really enjoyed this series. Kevin Kwan grew up in Singapore and grew up around these people who are, they're not just like mega rich, they are like crazy rich. These people, like, money is not a thing to them. They can just do whatever they want, have whatever they want, and live in a way that is just completely alien to people like you and I, unless you're like crazy rich. If you're crazy rich, come speak to me. I have some things I would like for you to purchase for me. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so this follows Nick and Rachel has grown up in a single parent household. She's not very wealthy, and she is sort of made herself through going through university and is now a professor, and her boyfriend Nick asks her if she wants to go to Singapore for a family wedding. When she gets there, she realises that not only is Nicholas fairly wealthy, he is like stupid rich. Like, there are the crazy rich people, and then there's his family, and so she gets pushed into these family politics, and obviously being someone that came from a not wealthy household. She doesn't have the name to back her up. She doesn't have the wealth to back her up. And she has to deal with these people who are just like insanely just like snobby. Doesn't even cover it. It just does not even cover it. The thing I love about this so much is that there are footnotes from Kevin Kwan as you're reading it to explain certain things that they say, and certain things that they do, because like I say, he grew up in this area and he went to the private schools, and his family I don't think are like crazy rich, but they're like wealthy, and he is drawn on experiences he's had with people and put it into this book. So pretty much like the people are really, really well written to the point of like these kind of people exist. He has witnessed these people existing, and I just love it. It's so dramatic. And this was unfortunately a victim of the pandemic because the first film got made and the second one we are still waiting on. But I actually really enjoyed the film. It did a really, really good job of adapting from the book, in my opinion. For 2014, we have the only horror book that I will ever read, and that is The Girl with All the Gifts. There's probably other horror books that I've read actually, but this is probably one of my favourite proper horror books. And this is about a dystopian future again, but this is where a fungi have taken over, and it's kind of like, you know, the one that takes over ants and makes them like it steers them like a puppet basically. This is what's happened. So this fungi took over and started turning people into zombies. Like basically zombies. I don't think they call them zombies, but it's basically zombies. And a bite would infect you, and then there's these little compounds of people, and they have started to study them and find out how they can, you know, not end up like them. But there's this caveat where children started appearing out of the wilderness who seem to be almost hybrids. So they do have the infection, but they're not mindless. So they've taken these kids in and have been sort of teaching them and experimenting on them and seeing what they're like, how they came to be, what's going on. Is this another step in the evolution? Are they hybrids? How did the zombies have children? Is basically what they're trying to figure out. And these kids are really, really interesting because so the people that are around have this gel that they put on every morning or every day, and it stops them from giving out this like any smell. So the zombies can't smell them, so they don't come after them. And so the kids, when they can't, so the teacher has like the stuff on, they're totally normal kids. Like they adore their teacher, they want to learn, they learn maths and English, and they're smart and they're articulate and they're just great kids. Polite, lovely, nice kids. But if you wipe off that layer, they suddenly become these ravenous zombies. And their mouths, like, they chitter. Their mouths chitter because their teeth want to, like, bite into them. It's really quite, like, and this follows the teacher and one of the students as they are kind of have to go out of the compound that they're in, and it's just a whole thing. Again, there's a movie of this, and it's a very good adaptation for me, but this book is just fantastic and slightly terrifying, considering that the fungi are probably the most likely thing to turn us into actual zombies. So this is more like a guide to what's going to happen, if I'm being perfectly honest. And 2015, the year of the book that ruined me, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This book, World War II historical fiction that follows two sisters in France during Nazi occupation, one who goes on the side of the resistance, one who has a officer billeted with her, a German officer, and a child to, you know, look after, and the two different ways that they deal with that and that they fight back. And oh my god, this book ruined me. This book just wrecked me. I've not been able to reread this for a while because it just hit me where it hurt so much. This book wrecked me, and I can't say anything else. But yeah, I'm still traumatized. And for 2016, we have Homegoing by Yagiaze. This is a very interesting book, actually. I really enjoyed this. This follows two sisters who, one is traded into slavery and one is the wife of a slave trader. And the differences that their lives take. So obviously they grew up together, so they had the very same upbringing. And then their lives obviously diverge very dramatically. And it kind of shows through generations how that has affected each generation and each family line. This book, I cannot even describe this book to you. I would not do it justice. But this is one of the best books, one of the best written books that I've ever read. And honestly, I don't talk about it enough, but that's because I don't know how to talk about it. It's just amazing. So yeah, please do pick this up and read it, because it's very well written, very important, and absolutely gut punching. Talking about gut punch, here's 2017, Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is a kind of a young adult mystery-esque thing. So it's about a main character who has OCD, and there is a missing billionaire, I want to say, and her and her friend try and find him, all against the backdrop of... So the billionaire thing's kind of the backdrop, but really it is looking at her individual existence with OCD. And John Green has OCD and anxiety, and so the OCD in this and the anxiety in this is written so well that if you have anxiety, one, you will be like, yep, no, that's nail, head, bang. But it can also send you into a spiral. Like this, the amount of times this sent me into like an anxiety attack or a panic attack because of how well written the anxiety was. So it's like a double-edged sword, because the anxiety is written so well, but it's written too well. But yeah, I've only read this once, but it really stuck with me. And it's just... John Green, I think he's a great writer anyway, but this in particular is absolutely stupendous. 2018 then brings us Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This is the third in the Wayfarer series, and this follows the sister of one of the main characters in the first book and her life on the ships. So there's these ships where they're like colony ships, so when humans left Earth, they did one of three things. There are those who stayed, those who left and integrated into different planets in this solar system, and those who stayed on these ships. And this is about the people on the ships, and it's so... This is probably one of my favourites. This is probably my favourite. It's between this and the first one, because this is about recording history and respecting history and culture, and just... I can't describe this so well at all. Like, it sounds like it's going to be one thing, and then it's not a totally different thing, but it's so much deeper. I dig so much deeper than you think it's going to go. But yeah, I'm not surprised this series won a Hugo Award. That's what that not sticker says. But I did not think... This is really my first time with this series that I've actually loved sci-fi, and it's made me want to pick up more sci-fi. 2019 brings me to one of my favourites, and that is Tall Tales and Wee Stories by Billy Connolly. This is basically... So if you've seen Billy Connolly's stand-up routines, it is basically stories from those. So his stand-up style, if you've never seen Billy Connolly, which if you've not, go rectify that right now. But Billy Connolly, his stand-up style, his comedy style, is to tell stories about his life and just sort of bask in the ridiculousness that is life. And so his books, his memoirs, really are like collections of bits of his stand-up put into a book, and a lot of them tend to follow certain arcs. So there are bits taken out of all these different stand-up routines, plus things that you haven't heard before, and they all tend to follow like a certain arc. This... Oh my god, this was just... These are things that are kind of a bit ridiculous that have happened to him, and I tell you, like, listening to the audiobook of this was great because Billy reads it himself, and it just made me laugh. so much. Like, I love Billy Connolly so much, and the way he can tell a story is just unrivaled, and I love his drawings, like. But yeah, I love that he's doing this, that he's writing these down, because as we all know, or you may not know, Billy Connolly was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease. Apparently I can't say that. And so, unfortunately, that is something that is life-limiting, and he is getting older, so to have his stories written down is just incredible, because I know so many of you will even if you ask like parents, grandparents, etc., how many people wish that they had taken on more of their grandparents' stories, because we're losing all the history, and he's put that history into these books in the form of absolutely hilarious and unhinged stories. For 2020, I had to go for The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is not everybody's favourite, but it is probably one of my favourite books. This hit me at the right time. This book found me at exactly the right time and really helped me in my mental health healing journey. That sounds a bit dickish, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't know what it is about this book. So you hate it or you love it. I don't think there's any sort of in between. And for me, it just, like I say, it hit me. It came to me when I needed it. It made me feel hopeful, and I loved it. This is about our main character, Nora, who has been having a really, really bad time of it. And so one night she decides to unalive herself, as it were. And during this process, she is sent to a place called the Midnight Library. So the Midnight Library is different for everybody. So it's not everybody gets a library, but she has a library. And it's this point between life and death where you can view decisions that you have made and see what it would be like if you'd made a different decision. So think like sliding doors-esque style thing. And so she spends her time in the library and going through all these decisions that she has made to see what would happen if she had made a different decision. And I just loved that. I loved the perspective that it gave me on we are on the path we need to be on, because obviously Matt Haig's not going to write a book where it's like, you know, actually it was a good idea to do that to like yourself. So of course by the end of it she'll realise that her problems are not insurmountable. Her problems are, when given perspective, things that she can, you know, make it through. And she like manages to get help. So that's partially what I loved about that, because sometimes I feel like I do need a reminder that we're on the path that we're meant to be on. It might not be obvious at the time, especially when we're going through it, but it's the reason they say hindsight is 20/20, because when you look back, these things that seemed so significant at the time are actually small parts of a big picture. And again, like, some people are going to be rolling their eyes at me, but for me, that's how this helped. That's what it did for me. And I know not everybody got that from this book, and, you know, that's a shame. But everybody reads differently. We all read a different book. It's not, you know, I don't know who's outside, but they're very, very rude. But yeah, it just reminded me, like, there have been interviews done with people who have survived jumping off bridges. And I think there was one very famous interview, or one very famous statistic shown by somebody who interviewed a lot of these people. And it was that about halfway down they realised that their problems were actually not that big. And I don't mean that in like a, oh, like, you know, it's not so bad, get over it kind of way. It was just that for some reason in that moment they were given a perspective that actually I can solve this problem. This is not the solution. And hearing that from someone who has taken the action to take their own life just shows me that we should really be focusing on helping people before they get to that stage, to put things into perspective that, again, these things that seem massive at the time, when you look back on them, may end up being tiny. There are some things that are obviously like massive, but that's totally different kettle of fish. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop going on about this book because we've got a couple more to go. For 2021, I have The Colourful Mind by Heather Dixon. Heather is one of my friends from school, and she's written this incredible book of poetry which looks at mental and other illnesses through the lens of colour. And so, for example, gold, you have Alzheimer's disease, fuchsia is dissociative identity disorder, crimson is Renfield syndrome, copper is Parkinson's disease, chartreuse skin picking disorder, etc, etc, etc. And I know Heather's my friend, and I know I'm going to big her up regardless, but I find that this is just excellent. It is indie published, it is available on Amazon. I will put the link down below. I really think if you like poetry, you are going to love this, because the research and the time and the just raw, open honesty that has gone into this collection is unmatched. I do not have most of these things. Thank God, because to have all of these things would probably tip you over the edge. But I do have anxiety. I've had anxiety for most of my life. And the poem about anxiety, again, it was like With Turtles All the Way Down. It was so, like, the nail, just, she hit the nail right on the head in such a way that it was like she was telling me about myself. And I just can't. It's fantastic. Like, there are so many poems in this as well. Like, it's massive. It's actually, like, it doesn't look like much, but there are so many. Like, there's the contents page, so you've got that. And then all of these as well. Like, they're all separate poems. There's 2 lines per poem on the contents, because you've got the colour and then the condition. But that is, like, there's so many poems. This, honestly, I'm telling you, you need to get this. I'll put the link in the description. I think we'll already know what I'm going to show you for 2022. It's the last year release that normally you would see behind me here, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven, or HMRC, by Juno Dawson. This is about this world where there is a coven that was set up by Anne Boleyn of witches, which aids the government in sort of magical things, called HMRC, obviously. And this is about 5 friends who, when they were younger, were just could not be separated. They were, you know, the best friends. And as they've grown up, they've kind of drifted apart. They've all changed in some way. One's become a housewife who doesn't really use her powers. One has become a vet who does use her powers to help her with her, you know, veterinary stuff. One is now the High Priestess of HMRC. One branched off and started her own more inclusive coven. And one kind of turned to the dark side. And it follows these women as things sort of kick off, as they discover this silly child who is meant to bring about the rise of Leviathan and the end of the world. And Neve is asked to communicate with this child and find out what is going on. You know, are they going to actually do this? Are they evil? Can they be stopped? It's actually so interesting. Like, it's mostly about relationships, and not just like relationships, but like relationships between siblings and friends, and it's so, I can't even describe this right now. It's so good. I just loved this so much. Did not think I was going to like this book, I'll be honest with you. Absolutely loved it. Really enjoyed the second one. Met Juno Dawson, and she is one of my favourite people ever. She's just so sweet, so kind, so lovely. And a couple of my friends got stuck in a lift with her at Yelk. Again, lovely human. Like, she was so just chilled about the whole thing, despite the fact that she was in there with 3 people who, you know, were at Yelk to see her, and that could have been quite scary. And she also rescued them from the lift. But yeah, so Tori Smash and Becca got to meet Juno Dawson and get stuck in a lift with her. So they can attest. Lovely person. So 2023, what book am I going to choose for that one? It has to be A Witch's Guide to Fate Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley. This is another book where I did not think I was going to like it, and I loved it. This book kind of solidified for me that if Meg recommends it, it's going to be a 5-star. Like, Meg recs are just on a different level, and anybody who's read this will be able to contest to that. This is about our main character, Marielle, who is a witch, but she's not a very good witch. Like, she's kind of like a bit like not very good at her magic, and so she's trying to summon Flower and ends up summoning a demon, and the demon can't leave until he has swapped her soul for something. But she's like, no, I'm not giving you my soul, like, no. So they kind of have to, like, they're stuck together because he has to collect her soul, and she's like, No. But then they start like this whole fake dating thing because her family of like really powerful witches are actually really dicky to her. So he like pretends to be her boyfriend to stop her mum from being so nasty. It's a whole thing. I love this. This gave me what the X-Hex did not. So it's set in this like magical village. So like there are, like you say, demons, witches, fae of different kinds, nymphs. It's just a whole thing. This movie, this would make a great movie. I love this so much. It's so funny. It is cute. It is sexy. It is just so good. I loved it so much, and honestly, really recommend it. And so that is it. 31 books for all of the 31 years that I have been alive. Thank you so much, Chloe, for doing this today and letting me steal this idea. And by letting me steal this idea, I mean I stole this idea, and thank you very much for being the one to show me this idea. I will link Chloe down below and pop everybody that I mentioned in the description as well as the link to my friend's poetry collection. Again, I really recommend that you buy it and read it because it's just so well done. But now I have a massive collection of books that I need to get back on my shelves because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. So if you want to leave an emoji to let me know that you were here, leave me a book stack emoji because that's what I'm dealing with right now, is a massive stack of books. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!